diving into a pretty heavy topic today.
Yeah?
The school shooting at Antioch High School in Nashville.
It's a tough one.
It is, and we're trying to make sense of it all using two very different sources.
Right.
A news article from WPLN News.
Good old-fashioned journalism.
Exactly. And then something completely different. A forum thread from Kiwi Farms.
Ah, Kiwi Farm's always a wild ride.
To say the least.
Yeah.
So WPLN, that's going to give us the straight facts, the, journalistic take.
Mhm.
Kiwi Farms, well, let's just say they're known for their, how do we put this? Their unique perspective.
Unconventional.
Yeah, unconventional is a good word.
They definitely have a way of looking at things.
That's for sure. But that's why we're looking at both.
Right.
Because we want to understand not just what happened, but how different communities online and offline talk about these kinds of tragedies.
Absolutely, because you see such different reactions and interpretations.
Okay, so let's start with the basics from WPLN just to lay the groundwork. The shooting happened January 22nd, 2025.
This year.
This year, just a couple days ago, in the middle of the day, right in the cafeteria.
Wow.
17-year-old student Solomon Henderson
Okay.
shot and killed 16-year-old Jocelyn Correa Escalante.
Good.
Another student was grazed by a bullet, thankfully.
Okay.
That's good at least.
And then Henderson took his own life.
Tragic all around. But what really struck me reading the article was, they mentioned 2 school resource officers were in the building.
Right.
But not in the cafeteria at the time.
Yeah, I can only imagine the chaos and the fear.
That's been terrifying for everyone there. The article talks about parents, frantically trying to get to their kids' traffic jams everywhere.
Oh, gosh.
And it was freezing that day, too.
Ugh, adding insult to injury.
It really puts you in the moment.
Yeah.
And there's this quote from a mother, Shante Fry. Her daughter didn't even want to go to school that day
Really?
because there had been so many fights.
Oh, wow.
Like it was in the air, something wasn't right.
Like a warning sign almost.
Yeah, and this wasn't the first time Antioch High had seen violence.
Oh, really?
The article mentions other incidents, students bringing guns to school.
Jeez.
Even a vehicular homicide back in 2020.
So this has been an ongoing problem.
It seems like it, which makes you think, is this part of a larger pattern?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if so, what can be done to stop it?
Right, and that brings us to another point the article made about Tennessee's gun laws.
Yeah.
Apparently, they make it relatively easy to get firearms.
That definitely adds another layer to this, doesn't it?
It does. But before we go there, I want to get your take on something else. The police are looking into Henderson's online activity.
Interesting. His writings and social media posts, they said?
Yeah, are they looking for, a motive?
Could be, or maybe signs of online influence.
Especially considering our other source.
Ah, yes, Kiwi Farms.
Right. So this is where things get a little more complicated.
A little more colorful, shall we say.
Yeah, colorful is one way to put it. I do want to give everyone a heads up. Kiwi Farms is known for its
strong opinions.
Strong opinions, we'll say that, and some pretty harsh language.
It's not for the faint of heart.
So just a reminder, this forum, it's a very specific online subculture.
Very niche.
Yeah, and they don't hold back.
Not at all.
Ah.
In fact, one of the first things they did was try to categorize Henderson.
Really?
Yeah, they were looking for any connections to online groups like 764, Groypers, incels,
I'm not familiar with all those groups.
They're all online subcultures that can be pretty toxic.
Oh, gosh.
764 in particular, known for sextortion and harassment targeting young women.
That's awful.
It is Groypers. They're a far-right political movement,
Okay.
often associated with white nationalist views and anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Wow. And incels.
Ah, yes, the involuntary celibates.
Blaming women for their own perceived romantic failures.
Lots of resentment, misogyny, that sort of thing.
So basically, Kiwi Farms is trying to fit Henderson into one of these boxes.
So this is like it.
Like his actions were a result of online radicalization.
Trying to understand him through the lens of these online communities.
But is that really fair?
I mean, it's complicated, right?
Exactly. Tons of people are exposed to this stuff online and don't become violent.
Right. It's important not to jump to conclusions.
But it does make you think about how these online communities operate.
They can be very insular.
Like echo chambers, where extreme views get reinforced.
Exactly. And sometimes that can spill over into real life.
So we're seeing 2 very different narratives here.
Definitely.
WPLN focused on the facts, the community impact Tennessee's gun laws. Kiwi Farms fixated on Henderson's potential online radicalization.
2 very different ways of understanding not just this tragedy, but violence in general.
Right, and it's not just about which narrative
Yeah,
right?
it's about understanding both.
Exactly, because that's how we get a clearer picture of what happened and why.
And that's what we'll keep exploring as we dig deeper into both these sources.
In part 2 of our deep dive, stay tuned. Welcome back. Still kind of reeling from those two perspectives, you know?
Yeah, it's
WPLN versus Kiwi Farms.
it's like they're looking at the same event.
Through completely different lenses.
Exactly, and that's what makes this so fascinating.
But also disturbing, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's break it down a bit more.
Okay, so WPLN, they're focused on the facts, the community impact.
Right, the human cost of this tragedy.
You can really feel the pain in the community.
Yeah, the article talked about that vigil at the church.
Hamilton United Methodist.
Right, and all those statements from officials, expressing grief, calling for action.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, but then you go to Kiwi Farms and it's like...
It's like they're dissecting the shooting.
Yeah.
Almost clinically.
Like it's a specimen under a microscope.
Exactly. And that focus on categorizing Henderson, connecting him to those online subcultures.
The 764 groypers,
Yeah,
incels.
right. It really highlights their worldview.
But isn't there a danger in that?
Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's easy to get caught up in labels and stereotypes.
Especially online.
And forget that we're talking about real people.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Reducing someone to a label like incel or groyper, it's oversimplifying things.
And potentially misleading.
Exactly. It overlooks the complexities of human motivation.
So let's talk about these online communities a bit more.
Okay.
What are they actually doing? How does their rhetoric online translate into real-world actions?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
These groups, they often operate as echo chambers,
Right.
reinforcing each other's beliefs,
Yeah.
escalating the level of rhetoric.
So it's like a feedback loop. The more extreme views get amplified.
Exactly, even if they're based on hate or prejudice.
But how does that jump from online chatter to actually harming someone?
Well, it's not always a direct line, of course.
Right.
But take 764 as an example.
Okay.
Remember the article mentioned the police were investigating Henderson's online writings?
Yeah.
What if those writings include evidence of him engaging in the same kind of harassment and exploitation that 764 is known for? That would be a concrete example of how online behavior can spill over into the real world.
That's a chilling thought.
It is. And it brings us back to that question of online influence.
Right.
Even if someone doesn't become violent, being constantly exposed to this kind of toxic content, it can't be good for anyone's mental health.
No, absolutely.
But we need to be careful about drawing a direct causal link between online activity and real-world violence.
Okay.
It's rarely that simple.
So it's more about understanding the broader context.
Exactly.
We can't ignore these online spaces,
No, they're part of the equation.
but we also shouldn't assume that everyone who participates in them is going to become a school shooter.
Right. It's about nuance. It's about critical thinking.
And I think that's an important takeaway for our listener, too.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get caught up in the fear, the headlines,
Yeah.
but we need to approach these issues with a clear head.
With reason, with compassion.
I'm starting to see how these two sources, as different as they are, can actually complement each other.
That's what I was thinking.
WPLN gives us the facts, the human impact.
Grounding in reality.
Kiwi Farms forces us to confront the reality of these online subcultures.
Even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, but by understanding both, we can have a more informed and productive conversation.
About how to prevent future tragedies.
Because, let's be honest, focusing solely on gun control or solely on online radicalization.
Neither one is going to solve the problem on its own.
So where do we go from here? How do we move beyond just describing the problem?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Stick with us.
Okay, so we've looked at the Antioch shooting through two very different lenses.
Yeah.
The news reporting from WPLN and then the more fringe perspective from Kiwi Farms.
Quite a contrast.
But now I think the big question is, what can we actually do about it?
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to feel kind of powerless, you know?
Yeah, that feeling of helplessness, it's understandable.
When you're faced with something as awful as a school shooting.
Right. But I think by examining these different narratives, we've actually started to identify some potential paths forward.
Okay, I like that. Walk me through it.
So WPLN highlighted some immediate steps that have already been taken.
Like what?
They mentioned things like shatter-resistant, glass security cameras, school resource officers.
Oh, right, the SROs.
Exactly. Those are all important measures.
Yeah.
But they also pointed to Tennessee's gun laws as something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it?
It is. And it raises the question, are these security measures enough, or do we need broader societal change to really make a difference?
Honestly, I'm more interested in what you think.
Well,
Based on your expertise, not just on this case, but on school violence in general?
I think we need to be willing to have those difficult conversations about gun control,
Oh, okay.
but we also need to recognize that it's not a simple solution.
Right. One law isn't going to magically fix everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's much more complex than that.
So what about the role of online communities?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to address the spread of extremist ideologies in those spaces?
This is where the insights from Kiwi Farms, unsettling as they are, become valuable.
How?
They highlight a reality we can't ignore. These online subcultures exist, and they can influence vulnerable individuals.
Yeah, I get that. But the question is, how do we counter that influence without, impinging on free speech?
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Like a tightrope walk.
You want to protect people from harmful content, but you also don't want to censor legitimate expression.
So what's the answer?
I think it starts with awareness.
Awareness.
Parents, educators, even just friends and family members need to be aware of what young people are consuming online.
Right.
And be prepared to have open and honest conversations about it.
It's like we need to build digital literacy skills alongside traditional literacy.
Exactly.
It's not just about identifying potentially harmful content, but also developing critical thinking skills, to evaluate information, recognize biased or manipulative rhetoric.
Exactly. It's about empowering individuals to navigate the online world safely and responsibly.
I like that it puts the power back in the hands of individuals. It's not about waiting for some big government agency or tech company to solve the problem for us.
It's about taking personal responsibility.
For the content we consume, the communities we engage with online.
Absolutely.
And I think it's also about speaking out against hate and intolerance.
Yeah.
Wherever we see it online or in our everyday lives.
Silence is complicity. We all have a role to play in creating a safer and more inclusive society.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
And it's been heavy at times.
Very heavy, but important.
But I hope you, our listener, come away from this with a sense of hope, not despair.
Absolutely. Tragedies like the one at Antioch High School, they're a stark reminder of the challenges we face.
Right.
But they also highlight the resilience of the human spirit and our capacity for compassion and action.
So to our listener, we leave you with this question. What will you do to make a difference? Even a small act of kindness.
A willingness to listen, a commitment to understanding different perspectives.
It can all have a ripple effect. We all have the power to create positive change in the world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.